Maybe it's just because I'm another year older and a few pounds heavier, but I'm sad to report that slipping into something sporty and low day in and day out is starting to lose its luster. Now, don't worry, I still love a good sports car as much as the next gearhead, but it's those low and lean cars that are getting harder to climb in and out of. But I have good news, and it's parked right over there. And the GLA 45 from AMG, yeah, it's looking mighty fine from where I'm standing. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, I loved that A35 I drove last year, and I still do. I think I called it one of the most well-rounded performance cars on the market, and I stand by that statement. But I can also see why getting in and out of a car like that every day isn't for everyone, myself included. And that is where this GLA class comes in. It's quite literally an A class on stilts. It uses the same mechanical parts and body as that hatchback. It's just a little bit taller, but this one I'm driving has one very important thing that you can't get in that A-class hatch, at least not in North America: a hand-built engine. Don't forget, this is the GLA 45, and that means it has a real deal AMG motor under the hood. It wasn't that long ago that every AMG on the market followed the one-man, one-engine philosophy, and that meant a single builder was responsible for putting all the pieces together before the engine was dropped into the car. The brand even took to slapping a badge on top so you know exactly who was handling your pistons and connecting rods. And then the brand sort of got watered down, so the most common 4 and 6 cylinders these days, they're mass produced. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still great. It's just not the same, but that's something this GLA 45 gets right. So this 2-liter turbo under the hood, yeah, it was built by my guy Tobias Romer. And all I have to say is, Tobias, thank you very much. Now, AMG says this engine is good for 382 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque, and that makes it the most powerful 4-cylinder crossover you can buy today. It's also a ton of output for something this small, and this turbo, yeah, it can be cranked up to 27.5 PSI of boost, which is insane. And between this 8-speed dual clutch automatic, all that torque, and an all-wheel drive system that can theoretically send all that's available to the rear wheels, this thing scampers in a hurry. I'm telling you, this thing is very quick. Now, 0 to 100 km/h times are about half a second quicker than the GLA 35, which uses all the same stuff you get in that A35 hatch. So this is good for right around 4.5 seconds to 100. Now, don't get me wrong, there was nothing wrong with that A35, and it felt quick in its own right, but this is downright ridiculous. I also have to say this thing has an amazing steering setup. It's got a great weight, and when you're really hustling it around out on a back road, there's all kinds of feedback, and it doesn't matter what mode you're in. Now, you don't have to drive this thing all amped up all the time, but I really encourage you to do exactly that. And there are all kinds of parameters you can adjust. You do have to pay $2,000 more if you want these controls here on the steering wheel, but that's another thing I would highly recommend. You get this drive mode dial on the right hand side, and then on the left there are these programmable buttons. So if you want to change the exhaust or adjust your dampers, you can do that on the fly. It is very cool. You can also pull up the main screen here on the infotainment display so you can really get into the nitty-gritty and see exactly what's happening. You can also set your individual profile. So if you want the most comfortable dampers to go with an amped up powertrain, you can go ahead and do that. I love how customizable this experience is. Now, all that talk does bring me to one of my favorite parts about this crossover, and that's that customizability, because right now I'm driving around in comfort mode. So if you scale everything back and you have these dampers in their softest setting, This thing is very mellow and relaxed. It's way more laid back than that A35. That one felt like it was just a little bit more on edge, but honestly with this thing, you'd almost be able to forget that there was an AMG badge on the back if it weren't for how quick this engine does perk up. But here's the thing, I still have it in comfort mode. Spin this dial over to Sport Plus. It's so quick, it sounds so good, and it really does have all the character of the A35, just in a little bit more of a comfortable package. I do want to reiterate, in case it wasn't clear, I still love that A-Class hatchback. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that this is better at the dual purpose stuff. And if you've watched my reviews, you know I love a vehicle that can do both. It can be fun and sporty, but it can also be comfortable. And then don't forget, this thing rides higher. It's got more ground clearance, so it's just that much easier to get in and out of. And that to me is a huge benefit, especially if you only have room in your driveway or your budget for one vehicle. Having an alternative like this is great. And then there's also the same kind of wizardry as you get in that A-Class or the GLB class. I can't believe how spacious it is inside this little crossover. It feels way bigger than the footprint would have you believe, especially the second row. There is so much room back there. I can sit behind myself. This is another one of those examples. My camera guy, Will, he's back there. You'd have no clue. The seat isn't even all the way forward so that he can have all kinds of legroom. There's a ton of space in the back, and there's all kinds of cargo room. We have Patty back. She's been gone for a while because I haven't had any vehicles that she fits or it makes sense to bring her out in, but there's more than enough room to stick her behind the back seat. Now there's something else I love here. That second row, it folds in a 40-20-40 split that is oh so European and practical, but that means if you have long items, you can lay them down the middle and still have 4 seats for people. That is so cool. I do have some complaints though. Now you can fold that center section down from the back. You just reach in and hit a little button, but the side seats, you have to walk around and pull these little tabs. That's a bit of an annoyance, but again, it's not that big of a deal, and there's all kinds of room when you do stash those seats. Honestly, I was able to get my bike in the back with the seats folded, which I didn't think I was going to be able to. But don't forget, because this is the crossover, you have roof rails, so you can put crossbars and throw your bike or whatever else you want on top, and that is very handy to have. It's just one of those little things that makes the difference between the GLA class and the A-Class hatch. Now, something else that separates these two are the seats. These ones are a little bit more basic and they're going to be more comfortable for more people, though you can add full-blown racing seats if you want. But I love this red and black interior, though I do have one more complaint, and it is a very tiny one. If you go with this interior, which looks great, you lose the little red on center stripe that you get with the base black interior. It's a bit of a bummer to me because it would look cool. You can still see it here. It's just black instead of red. But like I said, that is such a minor complaint. My other two in here are a little bit bigger and they're down on the console. First of all, there's this controller that's completely redundant because this is a touchscreen. And then there's also this little wrist rest. I don't know what this thing is supposed to be, but it just is completely useless. This whole setup, not so crazy about it. I like that you get some controls like your drive selection or your volume knob. Having that stuff down here, that's cool. But this touchpad just doesn't make any sense to me. And then here's the thing about this touchscreen. It actually works really well. It uses Mercedes-AMG UX interface. It's really nice. This one's got some upgrades. We'll get to those a little bit later. It works really well, but when you have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto running, you lose all kinds of space on this 10.25-inch touchscreen. And here's what really bugs me about it. Kia was able to figure out how to do it to use a screen the same size as this one, and it's a full screen display. The fact Mercedes can't do that is a real problem for me. And then here's the other issue. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, They're not standard. If you want those, you have to pay for a package that's $3,900. Otherwise, you're stuck with Bluetooth. Hey, Mercedes, it's 2021. It's time to get with the program. That, to me, is expected. You can get that in some of the cheapest cars on the market. So the fact it's not here is a real shame. Now consider this, the GLA 45, it starts at $60,500 before freight and tax, which is pretty expensive, but then this one has all kinds of options that make it $76,500 before you're paying the government share. That is not cheap, but here's the kicker. This one doesn't even have adaptive cruise control or lane keep assist. If you want that stuff, you gotta pay a couple grand more, and it pushes this thing to almost 80 grand out the door. That is a ton of money. Honestly, I don't mind having to pay for those performance extras or even this interior package. That is fine to me. But to have to get this close to 80,000 bucks for a subcompact crossover to get those features is a serious head scratcher. To recap, I like the performance of the Mercedes-AMG GLA 45, how spacious it is, and how it looks with this red and black interior. I don't like that it's so expensive with options that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto don't fill the screen, or the redundant trackpad on the console. So would I spend this close to 80 grand on such a small crossover? Well, it all depends. If I wanted something sporty and fun that was just a little easier to live with than your average sport compact car, yeah, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And one of my favorite things about this GLA is that there are no compromises compared to the A-Class hatch, and that makes it supremely cool in my books. Just be careful how you option it, or you'll be spending GLC class money and not getting the GLC class space.